Dragon Age The Veilguard is one of the most divisive video games I have ever seen in my lifetime, man. And that is saying something because we live in pretty divisive times. On one hand, you have people who absolutely love this game and will claim it's a masterpiece. When this game was in early access, many video game journalists gave it 9 out of 10s. And, on the other hand, you have people who say that this is a complete dumpster fire of a game. So I want to be the middle ground here, and I want to discuss the actual truth about Dragon Age The Veilguard. I am somebody who loves BioWare games, okay? I have been a fan of them for such a long time. I love the Dragon Age series. I love Mass Effect and all of that. You might be sitting here scratching your head wondering why I am putting out a review roughly 2 or 3 weeks after Dragon Age The Veilguard came out, and that is because I like to actually spend time in games and actually form a real opinion on them. I feel like the internet moves really fast nowadays, and a lot of people don't get time to form a genuine opinion on games releasing. So yeah, man, I'm not sponsored by anyone, I'm not getting paid for any videos, I'm not a video game journalist or anything like that. I'm just a normal guy who plays video games, and I'm gonna go ahead and share my opinions and the truth about Dragon Age The Veilguard. Is it a good game or is it trash? And is it worth your hard-earned money during this holiday season? So I feel like I'm speaking for a lot of people here. Something that was really off-putting about Dragon Age The Veilguard when it was announced was the art style and the overall tone of the game. They almost went for this like cartoony, childish undertone, which is just kind of weird for Dragon Age because Dragon Age is kind of like a dark fantasy meant for more mature audiences. So it was really interesting to see them go this like kind of cartoonish, goofy route almost. In the game, Dragon Age The Veilguard definitely has like dark undertones, okay? It's not some like upbeat, childish game, okay? It has dark undertones, but like the art style and the tone of the game is really, it's really weird, okay? That's actually going to lead into my first talking point. We're going to go ahead and dive into like the art style and the tone because I don't understand the route they went here. Now, I'm not saying it's bad. Like, the game looks good at certain points. The character design is pretty good, enemy design, all of that. But, there's just a hint of corporate soullessness in this game, okay? Like, at times, this game feels very, very corporate, all right? Which is kind of unfortunate, man. Like, it does feel very soulless at times, and it feels a little bit too over the top and goofy and just overall corny. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not enjoyable, and it's like, it's a theme that's way too overdone. A lot of people compared the theme of this game and the tone of this game to like Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's actually, pretty accurate. I love Guardians of the Galaxy, but like that's a very corporate, soulless theme and trope to go with a lot of characters, and I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about it. A lot of people seem to actually like it. And that's just a personal opinion of mine, all right? And it didn't really hinder any fun that I had with this game, and we're going to go ahead and get into the many, many plethora of positives I have to say, but I wanted to go ahead and dive into that because I know a lot of people, when they were looking at this reveal trailer and everything, and when this game first got announced, they were really confused because, they're Dragon Age fans, and this was kind of a completely different direction, yet this is still kind of like a continuity to the Dragon Age series, and it felt like a reboot almost. I don't know, it was weird, but that was just my personal opinion. Now let's go ahead and get into some of the positives I have to say. So the first good thing I have to say about Dragon Age The Veilguard is this is probably the best combat in any Dragon Age game, okay? Dragon Age games, low-key, don't really have the best combat, and it could be better in my opinion, okay? Dragon Age Inquisition is a great game. I really struggle with the combat mechanics in that game, especially going back to it like 10 years later. It's not that great in my opinion, and it wasn't that great in 2014 in my opinion, but that game is still good in its own regard. But Dragon Age games have always suffered with combat mechanics in my opinion. Now, Dragon Age The Veilguard improves on that significantly. The combat here is a lot of fun. It's really, really good. You feel a lot more mobile in the gameplay you're watching. I'm playing as a mage. That is the class I went for my playthroughs, and mages in this franchise, are very, very stiff, and you really can't move around a lot as a mage, and that kind of changes here with Dragon Age The Veilguard. You are very mobile. You can dodge. There's parrying, it's really good. The skill tree is also really nice. I think if you love a good skill tree, you will love this game. I really enjoy the skill tree and playing around with different builds in this game. Basically, the skill tree has, for every class, it has kind of 3 different branches you can go off, and that's like an archetype, and you can respec at basically any time. I always love that in games. I like always being able to change my build on the fly and not having to worry about missing out on certain skills. So Dragon Age The Veilguard is great if you love fun combat and a good skill tree. Alright, it is great in that regard. And Dragon Age The Veilguard is honestly a really good action game, okay? It's a great action game. And we're going to go ahead and get into the RPG elements here. Because RPG elements are important for a game that's marketed as a action RPG. I think, and in the action department, I think they did a good job. There's some good boss fights here. There's some fun enemy design. There's some fun level design. The combat's fun. It's actually probably one of the best in the franchise in the gameplay regard, I would say. Let's go ahead and get into another criticism I have. All right, the RPG elements, the RPG aspects and elements of this game are really interesting to talk about. Okay, so yes, this game is an RPG, and yes, your choices do matter. What you say and do to your companions, and the choices you make throughout the story do affect the outcomes. There are a couple pivotal moments that determine the ending that you get. There's different endings. I think that's always pretty cool. I'm a trophy hunter. I like to go by and go back and collect all the different ending trophies. So that's always a plus in my department. But the problem here is with the RPG elements, it's just lacking in the character department, I think, and something that makes Baldur's Gate 3 so good, one of the best RPGs of all time. Something that makes that game so good is the character depth and the way the characters kind of impact your game. For example, a Astorion is a vampire thief guy, and you don't find out that he's a vampire until later on. You befriend him, take him into your party, and you start to talk to him more, and then you find out he's a vampire. Then that gives you the choice to become a vampire also, and then you can get a new skill tree, like something like that. Like, that's really cool. And in Dragon Age The Veilguard, it just feels like you go up and talk to your different companions and level up their bonds, and you can level up their skills, and the characters don't really impact your playthrough all that much. That's really it. Like, you can kind of puzzle piece different characters into different big events that happen, and it's like kind of like whatever. In my opinion, it doesn't really affect your playthrough. It didn't really affect my experience, and I didn't really care for it at all. I didn't really care for any of the party members here, and these are party members that are returning from other Dragon Age games, and I low-key was just kind of like, okay, whatever. Like, they're not as interesting as they were in past games, and I feel like their characters were doled out a lot, and a lot of that is also due to the dialogue. Okay, the voice acting here isn't terrible, but it's so painful at times, man. I can't even lie. Like, there were times where I was just skipping through dialogue because it just got so unbearable and boring. I was like, bro, just let me go fight stuff at this point. Like, just please. I don't want to, I don't want to go do all of this. I don't want to listen to these corny, annoying voice lines that are completely soulless and corporate, like I said before. Like, it just feels really watered down. And even though there are big choices that you can make throughout the story that affect your ending, I still feel like there's a massive inflation of, choices and dialogue options just for the sake of it, just to make you feel like you're impacting the outcome of your playthrough, right? There's so many pointless dialogue options, and that's something that really starts to grind my gears, man, because I don't know, like, I don't mind dialogue and role-playing in video games, but like, I want it to actually matter, and a lot of it didn't matter in Dragon Age The Veilguard, and that just took away from my experience, because a lot of, what I wanted to do was go run around and explore the levels and, go do side quests, and I have to sit through these super, boring dialogue options. Like, it was really rough. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty rough. Yeah, I mean, the RPG elements aren't terrible. I mean, at least there are some choices that do affect the outcome of your game. And like I said, there's different endings, and that's always cool. And yes, there is like mechanics where you can increase bonds with your party members. For me, it just felt like a chore to go do that. It just felt like a chore to go increase my bond with party members because their characters just didn't feel interesting. And looping back to a game like Baldur's Gate 3, of course, I'm gonna compare Baldur's Gate 3 to this game, you know. Any RPG is going to get compared to it that's like this. And it's like, if your characters don't have depth, like, why am I talking to them? Why am I, trying to, it doesn't make sense. Like, it just feels like it's getting in the way of what's actually good in this game. All I really wanted to do after a couple hours was just run around and fight stuff and do quests, and I have to sit through, this dialogue. It just felt like a chore at times. Moving on here, I actually think the narrative is pretty interesting, alright? I think the story is actually good, and I'm not gonna lie, in the end game, it gets pretty good. I like the end game and enjoy the end game a lot, and the story definitely picks up and has some weight to it. At first, you think the story's, not gonna be a highlight of this game, but I'm not gonna lie, there's some turns and there's some twists here that are actually really interesting and good, and I like the story and narrative of this game. Overall, I think there's some things that could be done better, but I wasn't really expecting the story to be as good as it is in this game, and that's just my opinion. But like I said before, the story really doesn't get that good until like the final 5 to 6 hours. That's when the story starts getting a darker undertone, and we start getting into some cooler stuff. So yeah, it's not bad. It's not like anything like Red Dead Redemption 2 level of narrative, but I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was, and it was serviceable. It was pretty good. So to kind of wrap up my criticisms and positive feedback for the game, I think that, even though Dragon Age The Veilguard has kind of like this weird corporate undertone, and the tone and the art styles stray in a different direction, from the Dragon Age franchise, and even though the RPG elements here aren't that great in my opinion, there's still things to like about it, but it's not super, super strong. I think Dragon Age The Veilguard is a good action game, okay? If you're looking for a good, fun action game with fun combat, a fun skill tree, quests to grind, I think you'll have a fun time here. I'm kind of a sucker. I like a good skill tree. I like good combat. I had fun during this, alright? And at the end of the day, that's all that matters, alright? I just feel like the RPG elements and the dialogue specifically at times just, it kind of took away my experience, man. It got to the point where I was just spamming through stuff like, dude, get me out of this conversation. That's really, kind of like the biggest thing I have to say about this game. It's a fun action game, but as an RPG game, it's not that great. And, it's an action RPG. So if you like action, I say go for it. I say, Dragon Age The Veilguard is going to be a fun time for you. Now, if you are a Dragon Age fan or a BioWare fan, BioWare is known for making some of the most, some of the greatest RPGs of all time, like Mass Effect and some of the Dragon Age games. Once again, like, I think if you're a BioWare fan and a Dragon Age fan, I think you'll like this experience, okay? Especially if you've been disappointed with their recent works, okay? Everybody has. Anthem and Andromeda were terrible. This is a step in the right direction for BioWare, in my opinion, and they have to find their footing. So if you're a BioWare fan, I say that this is worth checking out. I think you'll have fun here. It's cool to see a lot of the older Dragon Age characters come back, and the narrative here is good, and it's a continuity of all that. So yeah, I think you'll have fun here. Now the kicker is I don't think you should spend $70 on this game. That is the biggest thing I'm gonna say here. All right, I think you can have fun with this game, but I don't think you can. I can't sit here and say that it's worth 70. It's not worth $70. I think if you were to find Dragon Age The Veilguard on sale for like 30 to 40 bucks, I think it would be totally worth it. Or if you were able to snag this on PlayStation Premium or Game Pass, I think it would be pretty good. I think it would be a fun experience. I just don't think it's worth $70 in my opinion, okay? Yeah, I think that's gonna wrap up my thoughts on this game, and I think I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. That is not a bad score. On my scale, that is a good score. So 6 out of 10 I think is a good fair score for Dragon Age The Veilguard. I think it's a nice middle ground between greatest game of all time and worst game of all time. I don't think it's worth $70 if you can get it on sale. I think it's worth it, especially if you're a BioWare fan or if you're looking for a fun action game with good combat and a good skill tree. Anyways, that's going to do it for the video. Make sure to drop a like and a subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.